having COVID. Getting tested throughout the week, making sure it's negative, so that.
Reverend Williams is on the line.
Okay. Hey, Reverend, how are you?
Good morning, how are you?
Good hearing your voice. Just give me one more moment. I'm trying to get something. I sent you a text. Did you see that story?
Yeah, I read that.
Isn't it awful?
Yeah, I did. Oh, girl.
That's where we are.
Disturbing.
That is where we are. And so I just wanted to share that with you because I thought it was so horrible. I mean, and they did it some years ago, but it's
yeah.
It's really awful. I mean, but it lets you know that where the fight is, you know?
Correct. We're in a constant state of division right now. It's insane.
Oh, it is. It is.
When she shot and killed Dante Wright, a black man,
Just.
And so, that's just so symbolic and representative of the division in our country that you would put it in the Capitol.
Oh, absolutely.
They shot and killed an assault suspect in clothing, but a bullet went through a dressing room wall and hit a 14-year-old girl who also died. We're promising a complete investigation.
Well, I'm not going to have that, so just give me one moment. That is not there. Pull this down. Hey, everybody. Is that my Carolyn Griffey? Love you, sweetie. Hold on one moment. I'm going to grab this.
The Census Bureau and the Department of Housing and Urban Development say the median sales price of a new home last month was just under $417,000, 14% higher than a year ago. The housing industry has benefited from low mortgage rates and a surging demand.
And got a couple of these.
Seek out larger homes.
Okay, very good. All right. Everybody, let's just get right to it. I'm so glad to be with you today. Everybody. I've got Pastor Tisha Williams with me. Of course, so excited that she's going to give us some good news today. This is our last live show of the year. And I'm so grateful to my WCPT and AM 950 radio families for their support. And it goes without saying, but it should be said. I thank God for all of you who meet me here every morning, and you help the show grow and grow and grow. It's just been a blessing to be with you. And particularly now throughout this pandemic, so many people have felt isolated. You know, they have felt alone. And I have not felt that way. I've been blessed with a family and a wonderful family of friends, but I've had you. And I want to thank you for waking me up at 2 in the morning every day. But it's a joy to be with you, and it's an honor to serve you. And I really hope that this show blesses you, and I hope that your engagement with each other, I hope that blesses you even more. I hope that you know that you're not alone, because now every day, Pastor Williams, people get online, and they are looking for each other. And that's a joy. That's a real blessing. And continue to look for each other. And please do that next week as well. I'll stick my head in and out, but I won't be able to. I've just got some other things I need to do next week. But, I'm just really grateful that I've had all of you. And I hope that you know. I hope that you know just how much I love and appreciate all of you. So it just goes without saying. No, it can't go without saying. You've got to say these things. As I sat with my mother yesterday, I said, wow, just a few months ago, both my parents were diagnosed with COVID. And that was a very painful moment and unsettling. But it was prayer that got us all through. It was prayer, and I thank God for your prayers, because it was your prayers that got us through, and I want to thank you for that. Thank you.
800-709-7022.
Thank you, thank you, thank you,
15.
thank you.
7022.
Optima Tax Relief.
10.
Apply for complete details. Please visit OptimaTaxRelief.com.
Because facts matter. You are listening to WCPT 820.
Would Ms. Potter please rise? I'm now going to read your verdicts as it will appear in the permanent court records of Hennepin County. In the matter of State of Minnesota versus Kimberly Potter, court file number 27 CR 217490, we, the jury, on the charge of manslaughter in the first degree while committing a misdemeanor on or about April 11, 2021, in Hennepin County, State of Minnesota, find the defendant guilty. And the verdict was agreed to at the hour of 11:40 a.m. and signed by the jury person on 12/23/21. The verdict on count 2 is we, the jury, on the charge of manslaughter in the second degree, culpable negligence on or about April 11, 2021, in Hennepin County, State of Minnesota, find the defendant guilty. And that verdict was agreed to at 10:30 a.m. on 12/21/21. Members of the jury, is this your true and correct verdict? So say you one, and so say you all.
We can change the world, change the world, change the world. We can change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Santita Jackson Show. It's a joy to be with you on this Christmas Eve, December 24th, Friday. Friday, everybody, on this warm day. It's going to be about 50 degrees in Chicago today. Bless us all. Bless us all. I want you to call me at 773-763-9278, 773-763-WCPT. And I want you to meet me here on WCPT, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station, and AM 950 radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota, sending my love to Mark Penske and Matt Cummings here in Chicago and the whole family at WCPT, Fred Eichner and Katie Dans and everybody, Antonio, sending Bedalia, everyone, my love today. And I want to, and Steve, and just my goodness, so many names. You always get into trouble when you start calling names. Chad Larson and the AM 950 radio family, the voice of progressive Minnesota, wishing you all a blessed Christmas. We've got a lot to talk about today. Of course, that was the clip of the judge who was reading the verdict of Kim Potter. Yesterday, she was found guilty. The jury, 12 people, 9 whites, 2 Asians, 1 African-American, found Kim Potter guilty of manslaughter. What do you think about that? Did you see her smiling mugshot? What do you make of this? I mean, we've had Derek Chauvin, who was prosecuted in Minnesota. This has never happened before in Minnesota, and it rarely happens in the United States. Now, police are being held accountable. What do you think about that? We're going to have Attorney Benjamin Crump on with Ck Hoffler, Attorney Ck Hoffler, to talk about this verdict. Of course, he is the lawyer for the family of Daunte Wright. Cannot wait to hear what his thoughts are with respect to this. And have we turned a corner? Have we turned a corner in America? Let's talk about it here at 773-763-9278, 773-763-9278. And I also want to hear from you. What are you going to be doing for the holidays? What are you going to be doing for the holidays? How can you do that safely? Of course, doctors Deborah Verholden and Shanina Knighton will be on with us to talk to you about, there's an interesting headline I saw that, will everyone eventually get COVID? And why? And, you know, I just saw on CNN, they had a physician talking, and she said, look, one of the big mistakes that we made in this pandemic was frightening people to death. We've got to change the messaging. You can't beat people upside the head. I've been saying that since the very, 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 very beginning. There are not even 30% of African Americans in the city of New York, at least as of a few months ago, were vaccinated. because we've also changed the definition of vaccination. I mean, there's just a lot, and a lot of people are walking around unmasked, and it's not the unvaccinated who are doing that. We have to find out how we can protect ourselves. Look at all of the layers of protection, see what we can do, what happens when you've been diagnosed with COVID. We've got a lot of stuff we're going to get into today on the Santita Jackson. And I do hope that you will meet me on the Santita Jackson and Friends page. Everybody, please like me there. Please like me on Santita Jackson and Friends. Not on the Santita Jackson page. That's a landing page. I have to have that open. But it's kicking people off, and I don't want you to think that I'm throwing your friendship away. I'm not. Please go to Santita Jackson and Friends. Meet me at that page. Join me there. Like me there. And just become part of the family there. And then, of course, Santita Jackson at Santita Jackson IG at Instagram, and at Santita J. Please become my friend over on Instagram and on Twitter. Everybody, let's get right to some of these headlines today. We've got a lot going on. It's going to be a really balmy holiday. I mean, it's going to be 54 degrees in Chicago today. 54 degrees. Can you believe that? I mean, I just don't even know how to make sense of this. We've not even had any measurable snowfall. 43 degrees will be the high in Minneapolis, St. Paul. In this part of the country, when I was growing up, we had white Christmases, but no more. Let's get to some of these headlines so we can get some good news from Pastor Tisha Dixon Williams. The U.S. has hit the second daily highest average diagnosis rate since the pandemic began. The United States logged a 7-day average coronavirus count of 1 Wednesday, surpassing a summer peak of over 165,000 infections. That is the second largest surge in cases since the pandemic began nearly 2 years ago. Florida, Washington, D.C., and Hawaii all have experienced, get this everybody, wait for it, an increase in infections of more than 500%. There's got to be something that we can do. We now have vaccines, we now have more therapeutics, and yet we are watching this virus surge. What else do we need to do? Perhaps we should be looking at infection prevention, and that is what we are going to be talking about today, how we can prevent infection. Everyone is talking about this incredible case, this incredible finding from the jury up in Minnesota. Kim Potter, the former Brooklyn Center, Minnesota police officer who drew a gun instead of a taser on young Daunte Wright, she was found guilty yesterday of first and second degree manslaughter in this young man's death. Potter, according to the CNN report, who is white, displayed no emotion as the verdicts were read. And when she took her mugshot, she had a smile on her face. We will see how much time she will get. Can't wait to talk with attorney Benjamin Crump and attorney Ck Hoffler and this wonderful panel about where we go from here. Pressure works. That is what progressive activists and lawmakers are frustrated by the GOP gerrymandering and voter suppression efforts celebrated on Thursday after President Joe Biden clearly signaled that he supports making an exception to the Senate filibuster to pass federal voting rights legislation. That's right. He said that the Senate should heed President Biden's call and act immediately, according to these activists. What do you think about that? He is now coming through. Do you think it's because we're a little anxious about 2022? I cannot wait to hear about that, everybody. In the meantime, Scrooge is alive, everybody. 21 million plus will be going hungry in the United States as Senator Joe Manchin from West Virginia has tanked the expanded child tax credit. And something really sad I see in the state of Illinois, and that's a sign of the times. The Illinois State Capitol Rotunda will feature a satanic sculpture. That's right. This year's installment is the third for the Satanic Temple. Will feature the satanic figure, the Baphomet, depicted as a baby. And that sits really in contravention of the baby Jesus. Can you believe it? When you walk into the rotunda of the Illinois State Capitol, you will see the devil. You can't make this stuff up. And we need to, as the Clark sisters had a song some years ago, pray for the USA. And I think that we should. Pastor Tisha Dixon Williams, as soon as I saw that, and they've been doing this since 2018, I had to reach out to you. I said, this is insane. It's just, and if you want to look at the school shootings, and this is where you hear me. if you look at all how our society is just going off the rails, this is what you see. This is excused. You see it in these award shows now. They don't even look like, the Grammys don't even look like award shows anymore. They look like satanic rituals. Yeah, I said it. And you know it's true. I don't even watch this garbage anymore. This is awful. And then you want to know what's happening in our schools where the kids are shooting each other up when we can't drive down the street without threatening to shoot each other because we're so hot-headed. Something's off here. And I think we need to pay attention to it, Pastor. I really do. This is ungodly and it's unhealthy and this is unsustainable. So, how you doing? What do you think about that? What do you think about that?
Well, I hope everyone else is doing well. You know, it's just, I think about the song Prince had many years ago, Sign of the Times. And that's really what that is. It's the sign of the times. We are in a country divided, and I mean, we can argue that we always have been, but I think the evidence of it is never more visible than it is now in every way. And the idea that that would be in the state capitol is what's more alarming. It's just a big red line right down the middle. And we're being forced to choose sides on every issue right now, whether it be health, whether it be religion, whether it be state. Everyone is being forced to choose a side.
Well, the song said, which side are you on? The song that our parents used to march to, which side are you on? Which side are you on? I mean, that's
right. Yeah.
I said,
it's interesting because everyone has a voice now, too.
Yeah.
That's the difference. Everyone with the creation of social media, everyone has a mic now. Everyone gets a mic. And as one of my good friends always says, there's a spirit in the mic.
Hey.
And once people get the mic, once their voice is amplified, it can become dangerous. So that's the times in which we live. So this is just, for me, another indication of where we are.
Well, thank you for that. It is.
Prayerfully not where we're going.
Well, let's hope not. Let's hope not. Girl, give me some good news today. I need it after seeing that craziness.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be with you guys today. I want to hang my hat here. This is the last show of the year. I'm so excited to have been able to share for this full year. And the last show of the year makes me think of an end game. That's what I want to talk about today. I want to talk about 2021, the end game. You all know I love comic books, and I can hardly stand it when one of my superheroes dies. Why? Because in my mind, they're just not supposed to. In 2019, fans from all over the world flocked to theaters for the final installment of Marvel's Avengers. Now, prior to this, when last we met the Avengers in the Infinity Wars, they were engaged in the battle of a lifetime with Thanos, a genocidal warlord. Thanos wiped out half the universe and fractured the Avengers' ranks, and that compels the remaining Avengers to take one final stand in Marvel Studios' grand conclusion to 22 films, Avengers Endgame. And Santita, I was excited to see the film, but I did so with fear and trembling, fully understanding that the cinematic culmination of 22 films over 10 years to include some of the most iconic characters in both pop culture and comic book history would certainly deliver someone's demise. In other words, for one of my many beloved superheroes, this was the end. Or was it? You see, the more I began to consider this conundrum around my favorite characters, I remembered what has always been true and what I've always loved about comics, is that the demise of one hero always means the deliverance of another. Don't miss that. Let me help you. Just as fans flocked to the theater in 2019 to learn the fate of Iron Man, just this past week, they assembled like the Avengers to see his successor, the Amazing Spider-Man. You see, it was Tony Stark's necessary ending that produced Peter Parker's new beginning. Here's how I know. The proof is in the production title, Avengers Endgame, not Avengers The End. You see, it wasn't the end of the Marvel Universe. It was just the end of one chapter. I wish I knew who I was talking to today, because someone right now on the line believes that right now, as you stand at the conclusion of 2021 and on the cusp of 2022, it's the end for you. But I'm here to give you good news. It's not the end. This is just simply your end game. It's not the end of your story. It's just the end of one chapter. It's not the end of your fight. It's simply the end of one round. It's not the end of your series. is just the end of one game. You see, an end game is the very last part of a strategic game, like chess. Well, let me think about the Queen's Gambit. Can I teach just for one moment? You see, the last few moves you make in your chess game are your end game. Here was what's interesting. A normal game of chess has 3 stages, an opening, a middle, and an end game. Now, the average chess player usually spends their time on the opening and the middle, but really doesn't give much attention to the important end game phase. But the end game in chess is the phase of the game that occurs after all of the pieces have been exchanged. And in other words, it's when you're down to your last piece and you think it's the end, that's when you begin to work your end game. And end games have different strategic goals than the other phases. One main goal is the opening, and the opening is to help you develop your pieces. This is us at the beginning of the year. I'm going to work out. I'm going to go back to school. I'm going to develop myself. I'm going to log on every Sunday for church. While in your middle game, your goal could be to attack an enemy or to protect yourself. That's us in the middle of the year. Oh, I don't have money for this. You know what? I'll work out tomorrow. Or maybe illness strikes. Oh, but in the end game, one of the main goals is to try and promote a pawn. Wait a minute. There's some expectation in the end game. I'm telling you this morning, don't pass on the pawn. You see, the pawn is the least powerful chess piece, but it can be promoted into any other chess piece. Don't you know today that in your end game, God can purpose the pieces of your life you thought least powerful to promote you to the next position? That's why the end game is important. Learning end game strategy drastically improves your winning chances. By learning solid end game play, you are setting yourself up for long-term success. Strong end game players, like all of you, can convert the tiniest advantages and win a game they should have lost. So here it is. You want to win in 2022? Tighten up your end game in 2021. And so the question becomes, as we come to the last few days in the year with our last few pieces on the board, what is your end game? What are you saying, Tish? I'm saying, what if for every resolution we make to start something, we are equally as committed to ending something that no longer brings you joy, something that's no longer working for you, something that's no longer needful, something that's no longer serving a purpose in your life. I'm saying, before you begin to bullet point all the stuff you wish to start, why not take a step back and evaluate what needs to end? And I'm sure you'll find that while endings are painful, they are also necessary. Jesus was a master at the end game, and I'm excited about that this morning because Jesus, like I said about the superheroes, I wondered at the end why it had to end like that. But remember what I said, one hero always has to die so another can be delivered. Be grateful for your deliverance today. Be strategic, be thoughtful, make an assessment, because you can win your end game and set yourself up for 2022. And that's not only the good news, that's great news. Happy holidays, everyone.
Ooh, it's just like shedding the skin, Pastor. You got to do it. You got to do it.
Gotta do it.
You got to do it. You got to
Whatever
do it.
last few pieces you got left in this year, whatever last breath you have in your lungs, whatever last energy you have, you can win this thing. It's not over yet. There's still some fight left in you. There's still some game left to play. Don't give up just yet.
You know, stay right here. Stay right here because we got a lot to talk about today. You know, I'm so grateful for you, just having met you. Pastor Stephen Thurston connected us, and we connected like pow, became sisters immediately. I'm so grateful for you, and I'm grateful for these young ladies, Dr. Deborah Holden and Dr. Shanita Knighton. Now, I've met everybody in person except Dr. Deborah Holden, who I talk to every day. But you know, it lets you know that you're connected by spirit. And I just want to express to the three of you just how grateful to God I am for you in my life, each of you. You're just blessings. And you bless everyone who listens to you. And just let me say that because I love you and I thank God for you. I met Dr. Shanita Knighton in person. Of course, I don't think I need to see her anymore, Pastor, because she was laughing at me with all my little my bottles of alcohol and things like that. I am not playing with this virus out here. Okay. But I just want to thank you all. So let me bring up doctors Shanina Knight and, of course, Dr. Deborah Verholden, who convenes us on all things health on the Santita Jackson Show. Everybody stay tuned. We're going to have Attorney Benjamin Crump on at the top of the hour to talk about the Kim Potter verdict. Dr. Deborah Verholden, today we're going to veer into territory that you've wanted us to really go into. And, of course, we have Dr. Shanina Knight who's going to guide us through infection prevention. I heard a doctor on CNN this morning saying that, there's some things that we got wrong at the beginning of this virus. Number one, we frightened everyone to death. And we're continuing to do that with the administration. They mean well, but they're not helping by telling people if you don't get vaccinated, you will meet a certain death. We're all going to die, but that's not the way you need to convince people. But there's something that's not happening, Dr. Deb. I mean, we have access to more vaccines than ever. We've got therapeutics that are coming down the pike, and yet we're seeing a rise of 500% in infections in Washington, D.C., in Hawaii and Florida. And we're seeing the White House ask the state of Maryland to stop dispensing monoclonal antibodies. And no one's talking about infection prevention, Dr. Deb. Why has it been important to you to highlight someone like Dr. Shanina Knight and talk about infection prevention? Why is that important in your mind?
Well, good morning. I think the first thing is we keep talking about, and we've had this really strong emphasis on the vaccine from the moment we found out that a vaccine was possible. I haven't heard the letters mRNA spoken so much in my life, more than in my, science classes in undergraduate. And I was pre-med major. I've never heard the word mRNA said so many times, spelled out, written out, spoken by people. And so, that's one piece of it, and I keep telling people we have now, if it was possible to vaccinate our way out of it, that opportunity has now passed us. Mm-hmm. And so as you think about it for the long haul, even the vaccine doesn't last forever, right? Even the vaccine doesn't last forever. We know now they talk about waning immunity, and it looks like for the J&J, remember when it was all the J&J, they wanted to get that in everybody's arms. Now they're saying after 2 months, you need a booster. But guess what does last forever and has passed the test of time? Washing your hands. Oh. Washing your hands has always been, remains to be, and will stay the biggest winner in the fight against the spread of disease and germs and infections.
I got 20 seconds.
Oh, my God. Yeah. So I think it's important because we need to give people what's going to stand the test of time and empower them and generations after them to prevent the spread of infection. And that, we just have to have that. People have to have that self-efficacy and that agency to take care of themselves. So
hold on, because I want you to know, whenever I tell people to wash their hands, it's not my idea. I'm quoting you, just so that you know, because people give me the craziest look in the world. I'm like, oh, no, she's an epidemiologist. She's the Associate Dean of Public Health at Michigan State University's School of Medicine. It's not me. I didn't come up with this. Okay? Dr. Nina Preventionist, everybody. Go to Instagram. Prevention Saves Lives is her website. We're going to be talking about preventing the contracting of COVID-19, whatever the variant is, everybody, because there's a headline that says, is everyone going to get COVID-19 at some point? Everyone doesn't have to. But what happens if you do get it? We got a lot to talk about on the Santita Jackson Show. Merry Christmas, everybody. We'll be back in just a minute. Dr. Deb, I have to jump out the way because people they give me the crazy eye when I say, well, you need to wash your hands. They look at me like I'm crazy. And now you're seeing...
wash them good, too. Wash them real good, too.
The right way. But they say Omicron wave will crash on U.S. Well, wait, what do you, how do you respond to this report that researchers, I said this yesterday, at the Institute for Health Metrics and Evaluation said that Omicron will infect 60% of the people of the United States by March, but 90% will never show symptoms. What are we supposed to do with that?
I think everybody needs to, we'll have to wait and see. I worry about some of these messages because I feel like they're dangerous. They give people, do you remember the folks, it was in Europe where they didn't want to get vaccinated. So they said, well, you know, you can either get your vaccine card or you can produce proof of a recent COVID infection and then you're allowed to travel. So they had a COVID party. Yeah. They said, you know, we don't, you know, in our group, you know, we're young, we're healthy, we're blah, blah, blah. And they had a COVID party and the COVID positive person, known COVID positive person came and essentially gave everybody COVID. They all contracted COVID and like half of them ended up hospitalized and half of those died. I mean, it was just so tragic.
Yeah.
Because it was preventable, you know, and so I don't know. I heard the news very early on. You know, I read the same sort of information everybody else read. They said this thing seems to spread more easily but cause milder symptoms. And then I heard somebody say, it's just like a cold. And then I thought back, because this is what people are doing during this pandemic, your everyday person. They're stringing together what I call the goalposts of information that they have. So I know I've said on this show a bunch of times, this is, you know, coronaviruses are not new to the human population. This particular strain is the virus that causes COVID-19. SARS-CoV-2 is new to the human population, but coronaviruses in general are not. It's the same family of viruses as the common cold. So in my mind, I said, I can see what people are now doing. They're saying, it's in the family of colds. It started off strong. Now finally here comes the save our souls strain. It's going to be just like a common cold. And literally I've had a bunch of people ask me, why shouldn't I just get it? Why not just get it? They say this one, ain't only one person died from this one so far. Why shouldn't I just get it? And then can I just be around my family after that? Why can't I just get it? And, you know, I'm telling people because we just don't know. We're basing that on what we understand so far. How can we speak anything about a long symptom for a strain that's only been out for a month? You know, so I'm looking at people like a very good friend of mine. I said,
I'm coming up in
I really want to go
10 seconds.
30.
And she said she just left. She went to Spain and then Portugal, each for 1 month. She said 90% in one country vaccinated, 85% in the other. And every time people go indoors in both of those places, they just put their mask on. It's like no big deal, not a big problem. And they have something that looks very similar to some sense of normalcy. But that's a part of their new normal, and it's no big deal.
5 seconds.
But we politicize this, Deborah, and you know you can't talk about religion or politics without a fight. And politicizing this was always a mistake.
Change the world, change the world. We can change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world.
Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Santita Jackson Show. Merry Christmas, everybody. It is Christmas Eve. Can't believe it. Friday, December 24th. Christmas is tomorrow, and it's going to be 54 degrees in Chicago today. It's in the 40s in Minneapolis, St. Paul. We're talking about infection prevention. We're getting these alarming numbers about COVID-19 and Delta variant, which is really from what we see thus far, the really, really deadly variant, or the variant that really is very, very harmful. People really suffer with that. Omicron, not so much, at least not at this point, but we need to talk about infection prevention. And so we've been talking with Dr. Deborah Verholden, who brought Dr. Shanina Knighton to us. Dr. Deborah Verholden is one of the foremost people in the world in the public health space. She is an epidemiologist. And just because you don't see her on MSNBC all the time doesn't mean she should not be there. And CBS and everything else. She should be. and she's here, and she donates her time to us every single day, really helping to give us information so that we can be empowered. So let's talk about this, everybody, because you brought Dr. Shanita Knighton to us to talk about infection prevention. I mean, and that's so important. As I was listening to a doctor, I told you this morning on CNN, who said, that's something we haven't talked about either. I said, wow, are we turning a corner? Are we now going to talk about infection prevention? She said, we're making people fearful and it's making people angry. That is true. And I was reading a Today Show report. Is everyone going to get COVID at some point? They said, well, expect to be exposed, but not necessarily infected. They do say that getting vaccinated and boosted will be the biggest differences. But you have always said, before we go to Dr. Knight and Dr. Deborah Furholden, that we need to have a Swiss cheese approach, that there are different layers of protection, and one of those is infection prevention. Dr. Deb?
Yeah, no, for sure. And in that world of infection prevention, there's all of the practices, that people do. And then there's also what I've been saying, taking the reins of your own health. There's a lot, and I focus mostly, my work is mostly around dealing with the systems and the structures and the policies that shape and influence health and health behaviors and opportunities for health and health behaviors. So this notion of this individual responsibility, I understand that people are experiencing health and practicing these behaviors in a context, but I really saw a heightened need during this pandemic to let people know how much is in their hands and simple, basic things that they can do that are in their control that give them the best, sort of possible chance out here against germs, against other illness, etc. So, yeah, it's not just any one thing that's going to carry it. There are multiple layers, and within those layers, there are things that people have right in their own hands, which should give people a sense of agency and a sense of power. Like, I actually have some say over this.
Everybody wants you to call me at 773-763-9278, 773-763-9278. Have to send out a special love to my girl Carolyn Griffey from Shalimar. I love you, girl. That's my girl. She is Dick Griffey's daughter. They owned, of course, Solar Records back in the day. They gave us Babyface and LA and Shalimar and The Whispers and she's leading Shalimar along with Howard Hewitt and Jeffrey today. I'm so excited. I love you, Carolyn. I love you. I love you. Love you. That's my beloved sister, dear sister friend. Everybody, let's talk about infection prevention. Dr. Shanita Knighton, you're an infection preventionist. This is what you do. We're seeing these alarming rises in COVID-19, and they're saying that 60% of us will have, they say we will have it by March. So is there anything we can do to really turn that prediction on its ear, to make that not happen?
Good morning.
Good morning.
So I just want to tell everyone, yes, you all are actually the first people I talk to. So it don't matter if I'm up at 5 a.m., 6 a.m. I'm just around the house quiet, and I don't realize how horrible my voice sounds until I get on the radio.
You sound great.
So I just want to say that you all brought up something, and I was listening to was it Pastor Tish this morning?
Absolutely. Are you still there, Pastor Tish?
Yes.
She might have gone, but okay.
Just talking about the Avengers and talking about the end game, right? And so when I think about that, just thinking about hand hygiene in general, and so just like how Dr. Deb gets that funny look and you, Santita, get that funny look about hand hygiene and its importance, imagine me having a life's work committed, right, to that and emphasizing that, and people looking at you crazy. Like, oh my gosh, you a scientist that study primarily hand washing? And they don't understand that it's about the science that's behind it. When I say, clean your hands, it's not just about cleaning your hands, but it's about, are you doing it correctly? Are you thinking about, the rings that you're wearing? Are you thinking about, the potential fake nails, plastic nails, long nails? Are you thinking about bracelets that you may have on? All of these things, while they may be pretty, while they may be nice, can also serve as a harbor for pathogens. And pathogens are harmful fungus, bacteria, and viruses. And many people don't think about the fact that the crevices of your jewelry and the crevices of your nails, especially if they're long, can harbor these things. So when I mention to people about scrubbing up under their fingernails, helping them to understand that even in the time of this pandemic, COVID loves plastic, and that COVID can live on plastic for up to 3 or 4 days, you think about your nails different, right? When we find out, early on in the pandemic that COVID can live on metal, it can for up to 3 days, 2 or 3 days. It can live on cardboard and think about the
It can live on
materials
cardboard for
it
how
can
long?
survive on.
Well, how long can it live on cardboard?
For up to 24 hours.
Oh, wow. Okay. You just went out.
So
I just wanted to make sure we got that.
Okay. I don't know what's going on with the reception this morning all of a sudden.
Honey, don't even worry about it. We're going to work it out.
Gotcha. So we don't think about those things, right? And so when we think about our jewelry on our hands, we're not thinking about metal. When we're thinking about our clothing, because early on people would say, well, why do I got to take my clothes off, or why do you recommend changing it? And what I would tell people is it's not necessarily about the cloth, because the virus itself is not going to survive on cloth or like cotton-like materials for a long time. We know that. But the plastic zipper that you use, the metal buttons, that are on your clothes, we don't think about those items that are on our clothes. When we're out in public and we're having to zip our coat, when we're having to unzip our coat at home, there's things that we just don't think about that we're going to come in contact with our hands. When we're talking about masks and we're talking about safety of masks and, again, why infection prevention exists, it's not just about wearing your mask. It's not just about putting a mask on. What are you doing with that mask? Meaning, are you taking it off from ear to ear, or are you grabbing it directly from the front to lower it? Are you putting germs right back on your hands, right? So if you are an individual and we recognize that you can breathe through the mask, if I'm talking and I have droplets that transfer a little bit, even if it's just a little bit, to the outside of that mask because I'm talking, if I have a little bit of nasal drainage that transfers to the outside of that mask, when I go to grab that mask by the front opposed to from ear to ear, I've transferred all of those germs to my hand. So I may unknowingly transfer those germs from my hands to another individual without even knowing that. So that's why I bring up the importance of making sure we're taking it off from ear to ear. Now, while we understand that there is controversy, meaning that there is emphasis on the possibility of needing a hospital-grade mask based off of this Omicron variant, there's people that can't afford it, and Dr. Deb knows about this best in regards to the fight that we have for equity, is that we have leaders that will make recommendations for the general public, but it's not applicable to the general public because not everyone has access and not everyone can afford those materials. So for the individuals that had to cut up a T-shirt early on in the pandemic, that had to use coffee filters, that had to use stuff really that was cloth, because the coffee filters are not cloth. Think about those individuals that, for convenience, thought that it was okay for them to disinfect or spray down the mask and what that did to their skin. The fact that they were inhaling those materials because they did not know any better. Think about the ones that were laundering those masks, right, with regular detergent, not realizing that their skin on their face had a sensitivity that potentially would cause an outbreak. So these things, even early on, where we had basic recommendations of wear a mask, which was, it said clean your hands, put on your mask, and take it off. That was it. So early on, when I realized that, yes, the public is not aware in the same manner of the individuals that are writing the guidelines, I made sure that I addressed that. And so a lady, Tara Harrell, or Hale, from Forbes, did an article with me just on how to wear a mask safely and how to manage a mask safely. And so when we think about the role of an infection preventionist, this is what would be essential. When we talk about physical distancing, people's, I would say, direction, and not just direction, but let's say proximity, some is off than others, right? How many times has somebody been in your personal space and you're like, hey, you're a little bit too close, bruh, and they don't even realize it. So they have no sense of being in somebody's personal space, which means that people would have had no sense of what it meant to physically distance, right? To stay 6 feet away. So this is why the signage was important. How can signage be strategically placed and education materials be strategically placed so people understand what 6 feet means? So I'm bringing all of these things up to say, if there was a consistent message overall about just these 3 practices, people would stay ready, they would understand how important they are, and they would really recognize that when we looked up last year in November and December, and we had very, very low flu cases, we had very few people that needed hospitalizations because of a common cold or because of RSV. It's because people were cleaning their hands and they were conscious about the environment. We don't think about these things. And so my concern, where somebody might have said, Dr. Knighton, are you being an anti-vaxxer? No, that's not it. My concern is that out of the history of respiratory infectious diseases, we have been able to possibly control or minimize symptoms, but we've never been able to eradicate a respiratory infectious disease. TB still kills 1.5 million people per year because we don't have a quote-unquote cure. We have RSV that is still harming babies and older adults. We still have influenza that, yes, a flu vaccine helps people out, but it does wax and wane, and it wears off after 7 months. And there's new strains that will continue to evolve and emerge. None of us stay the same. Who I am today is not who I was yesterday. It's not who I was the day before, last week, last month, last year. So we have to understand that these pathogens are not going to stay the same. And when I say pathogens, I'm talking about deadly or harmful bacteria, viruses, or fungus. So not just talking about a virus. So we have to think about it from the standpoint that as these things evolve, as we face an antibiotic crisis, which has been looming and imminent for years, meaning that we have overused antibiotics as a human civilization. And now these bugs have outsmarted a lot of the antibiotics and a lot of the treatments. So just as we had the World Health Organization point out and some scientists that were concerned early on, we cannot medicate, vaccinate, or treat ourselves out of a pandemic without any preventative practices to go along with it. So I advise you, whether we're talking about an emergence of a more dangerous strain or by the grace of God, these strains are getting weaker and weaker. I caution you to stay ready so you don't have to be ready, because a lot of the individuals that died early on, it was because of spread, because of a lack of practice, because we have not normalized infection prevention to be a part of our culture.
You know, everybody, call me at 773-763-9278, 773-763 WCPT. I'm hearing from Hannah. Hannah said, you know, she has been traveling, you know, and people have to travel for work. And when you go to the restroom, people are not washing their hands. Dr. Knighton and Dr. Verholden, they're not washing their hands. They're not. Would you say that? Was it you or Dr. Verholden who talked about the sprinkles? Oh my gosh. They're not washing their hands today.
I'm with you, Hannah. I see it too. It's unbelievable. And you want to know something else that people never pay attention to? People wash their hands for as long as the water stay on.
Yeah.
And especially in a public restroom. So, and it's wrong, okay? And I'm saying that. Have y'all seen the faucet where you push the faucet down, and it's like you got to keep pushing the faucet down in order to keep getting running water, because as you trying to wash your hands up under some water, it keeps on interrupting you intermittently, so you can never get your hands fully rinsed off because this button keep popping up. So I will tell you that in a lot of cases, some of the things logistically need to be fixed inside of restrooms. Inside of restrooms, I would also tell people too, and this sounds crazy because thank you, Hannah, because you just brought me to another topic. Make sure you have your own paper towels, because you'll go inside of a restroom and all they have still is air dryers. And I have no understanding of that, because we are in the middle again of a pandemic and you don't know what people do with their hands. And if the lady got out the restroom, she washed her hands, but in between that, she somehow touched her nose or touched her face, you then have that person that's going to put their hands inside of that dryer, and you're going to hope that before those droplets come back up and disperse, which they will, that they have not traveled into the air and that they've dried out. And it sounds like a lot to somebody, but this is actually what we're studying right now is the splash factor from the sinks, because some sinks are not deep enough and some sinks are not shallow enough to prevent the splash factor, the same way that there's a splash factor from toilets, right? So we don't think about these things in that manner. And so I caution people that when you wash your hands, try to make sure you got something to dry them with on hand. And I know that you're like, oh my gosh, I got to carry everything, hand sanitizer, disinfectant spray, paper towels, because I've been in restrooms that didn't have an automatic door and all they had was those dryers, which means that it was imminent that some portion of my clothes had to touch that door handle to open it back up, because they didn't have any, they trying to save money, and they don't realize that single-use towels are effective right now and are necessary. But you have it where I get it. We were moving towards this whole eco-friendly thing. Well, right now, we still have to think about germs in a different manner. So I'm always looking for paper towels to fully dry my hands and not utilize those machines. Because, again, if you're in a closed-in restroom, it's just droplets that's being flown around.
Well, hold on 1 second. Dr. Deb, I want to know, okay, because I'm seeing Hannah. I see Michael Ann, who says she is a food server, like my grandmother. And God rest her soul. And she said she's the only person at her job that ever washes their hands. I want to know, Dr. Deb, how in a pandemic, a global pandemic, we're not getting this kind of information. We're not talking about hand washing. We're not looking at the impact, because you do policy. We're not looking at the impact, and we're about to let the child tax credit expire. 21 million folks are going to go hungry. That cannot be a good thing for you not to be able to eat or get enough nutritious foods or get enough food, period, in a pandemic. Why aren't we having these conversations, Dr. Deb? Should we be having them? Or, am I wrong?
There's some critical things, and Dr. Knight, I think, pointed to this, that we just haven't addressed, that we just taken our eyes off the ball on. Everybody's so caught up with COVID. It missed most people that last year we basically passed our flu season. That basically, came and went without incident. When we, and it's so crazy to me because the numbers were a lot worse in most places than they are right now. But we have so few provisions in place and so few restrictions in place. But accepting that we needed a living wage for people. Do you know how crazy it was when they put in that enhanced unemployment payment and people were getting an extra $600 a week? So there were people who were making more money on unemployment than they were working. People who want to work, people who want to do the right thing and get up and earn their keep and all of that. And because we people were panicked and really didn't know what to do, the government said we've got to intervene and acknowledge the resources and supports that we provide for people aren't sufficient. For many people who get unemployment, who make more money, what you get when you get unemployment is like just enough to keep you in poverty and stressed out and eating bad and worried and all of that. But then we somehow said, no, we know that's not enough. Let's give people what they actually need to be at home, for the people who are not able to work right now. Let's actually support small businesses and give them, what they need to meet payroll and keep things afloat as we, figure out how to, what they kept saying, reignite the economy and all of that. There are all these things that we learned and we figured out, but there's no permanence to any of them. There was no core value underneath of it. Like, really, everybody does deserve, the opportunity to live with dignity and have all of their basic needs met, independent of their income or where they live or what they were born into. Because most of us are born into our socioeconomic class. You're born into that. And we've got really strong data that for Black and brown people, it's very hard to come out of that. If you've lived in poverty as a child, you've got about the same probability if you're a minority of living in poverty as an adult. So we learned, not learned, but a lot of the things that we've known, we put into place because we needed everybody to behave and act a certain way. Because back then we had hope that we'd be able to get this, behind us pretty quickly. And so, but then we don't practice those things. We don't put in basic provisions. We place a hierarchy on the value of human life, and it shows up in how we treat people, both as groups and as individuals. And now we're paying the price for it. We're paying the price for it in our country, and we're paying the price for it globally. This global inequity and all of these resources has helped to keep this pandemic in a never-ending cycle of ups and downs and ups and downs and ups and downs. And it really truly feels like there's no end in sight. So,
well, there should be an end in sight, and there will be an end in sight. It's just, what will it look like when we get there? Well, I tell you what, I want to thank you, Dr. Shanina Knighton, Dr. Nina.preventionist on Instagram, Dr. Nina.preventionist on Instagram, and Prevention Saves Lives. That is her website, preventionsaveslives.com. Prevention Saves Lives. You need to do that before you go to the airport. I mean, because Dr. Deb, they keep telling us, being in the airport, and now they're saying that you shouldn't take your mask off on the airplane. You need to drink through a straw. I mean, how are you supposed to eat? How's this supposed to work? This is crazy. Listening to him this morning, I was like, are you serious right now? There was a man who had been on a flight for 30 hours. Like, how is he supposed to do this?
30.
Look, you guys, you know what? God bless you and Merry Christmas. PreventionSavesLives.com, drnina.preventionist, and coming in the new year. And that's on Instagram, drnina.preventionist. Coming in the new year, we're going to be talking about vaccines and all things health, led by Dr. Deborah Holden, Associate Dean of Public Health at Michigan State University School of Medicine. We're going to be doing that. We're going to work on our health. We're going to get right. Attorney Benjamin Crump coming up, everybody, to talk about the Kim Potter verdict. What did you think about that? Call me at 773-763-9278. Back with more of the Santita Jackson Show in just a few minutes. Dr. Deb and Dr. Knighton, I just love you all. I hope you know just how much you mean to me.
No, well, likewise. It's definitely mutual.
Absolutely.
I just love my little sisters here.
It wouldn't be the same if I wasn't getting text messages from you at 4:30 in the morning.
Okay, it's time to hang up on Dr. Deb. Let her go. Let her go. Let her go. Time for her to go.
My idiot is gone. I'm looking at my phone. I'm like, why am I up? And I hear. I looked down and I said, well, I guess I'm not the only crazy one out here.
Before she talks about my sleep hygiene, I am so tired of you talking junk about me. I can't believe you did that.
I'm thinking, here's the question. was asking myself, I'm like, is she waking up?
No.
Is she up in sleep yet? Like, what? 4 o'clock in the morning feels like the exact wrong time to be texting when you got to be up, 2 hours later for the show.
I know, girl.
I'm confused. What's happening right now? Is she up early or going to sleep late?
I don't get a lot of sleep. You know what? The thing is, when you do a show of this type, typically you have a staff, right? Because you're always looking for information. And I am so hyper about, I don't want to oversleep. So if I wake up at 1:30, I'm up. Because 1:30 becomes 2, and then I'm up. And then I want to catch the news and then I need to read because I don't want to, I don't want to get caught flat-footed without information. You before you can host a conversation or steward a conversation, you really need to have the information. You can always tell when a host has not studied. And really, the dean of Black journalists here in Chicago, he's passed on, Warner Sanders. He gave me one of the great compliments because, when I was dropped into this, I'd never done anything like this before. He said, I listen to you every morning. It almost brought tears to my eyes. I said, really? He said, and I can tell that you read. You read the books, you read the information. I said, thank you so much. He said, stay right there. He said, I listen to you first thing, and I stay with you until you're done. And that made me work even harder. You know how it is. We've all had the experience when someone you admire and respect tells you that you're on the right track. It makes you work even harder.
Absolutely.
Okay? My father's not given to giving compliments like that. He will encourage you, but he will say, I can't, he'll say about me to other people, you can't outwork her. And you're not going to out-research her. She's going to dig and dig and dig and dig. He said, sometimes it drives me nuts. Because I'm like, you missed that comma. Oh, wait a minute. I would give him a study in a minute. And he's like, Santita, all this is not required. That's all I saw him do all of my life, read and study. So, and watching you all, I mean, you all are so brilliant and knowledgeable and studied. And it's just a blessing. It's a blessing. And so many people, I have gotten so many compliments about you, Dr. Deb, and about you, Dr. Shanina. People are always so excited when they see you on TV, Dr. Deb. They're like, wait a minute, I saw her. What? What? And now they're glad to see Shanina, doing her, her getting on camera. They're like, what? Yes, and she looks like a little baby, and she is. There you go. And Dr. Deb does not look like a grandma. She's a glamour. Oh, my gosh. Oh, now, Medi, you say you do the same thing. If you wake up in the middle of the night, you read, girl, you need to go to sleep. Get you some sleep. Get some sleep. And Effie Rolfe said, you have a master class for the show every day. Great information. Thank you. Well, I have people who give you great information, and that's all there is to it. It's not me. I just try to find people who can give us the right information. Okay. And no, keep on calling them. They will. I think Attorney Crump will be ready about 5 or 6 minutes after the hour. So just keep on trying, and so will Attorney Hoffler. Attorney Banjo?
It's gonna be good.
Oh yeah, stay right there. It's gonna be great. Attorney Banjo?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Hey, how are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I am doing great. How do you want to be introduced, Attorney Banjo?
It could be former prosecutor, civil rights attorney.
Okay. Former prosecutor.
Attorney Crump is on the line now.
Attorney Crump, let me say hello to this man who I love so much.
Good morning.
I love you. How are you today?
I'm doing well this Christmas Eve, and I'm so thankful to be on your show. Thank you for having me.
Oh, please. I'm so honored to have you, and I thank my dear sister, beloved, CK, for making it happen. Let me introduce you to a few people here. Do you know Attorney Maria Banjo?
I think I do. Good morning.
Brilliant prosecutor. And then I have two young women here who just wanted to hear you and express their admiration for you, Attorney Crump. Dr. Deborah Holden had a full scholarship to Johns Hopkins. She's an epidemiologist, became one at 24. And she's the Associate Dean of Public Health at Michigan State University School of Medicine. She's also at Johns Hopkins. She wanted to stay on. And Dr. Shanina Knighton, if I may say so, she's the first person in her family to graduate high school. She's a PhD, a nurse, an infection preventionist, a research clinical scholar at Case Western Reserve University. And these are the best that our country and world have to offer. And this is, of course, the iconic Attorney Benjamin Crump. So you all can say hello real quick because we got 10 seconds. Say hey.
Good morning.
Attorney Crump. Great to meet you.
Good morning.
And Flint loves you. Flint loves you. I'm in Flint, Michigan. We love you.
Thank you so much. Black girl magic all over the radio this morning.
Yes, and you are surrounded.
All right,
Come
everyone's
on
the
now.
line now, and we're about to start.
Okay, we're coming in.
Everyone,
This was made possible by CK.
Oh, that's
Good morning.
BK. Good morning, Madam President.
Stand by, everybody.
Ms. Potter, please rise.
Good morning, everybody. Good to hear
I'm going to read your verdicts as it will appear in the permanent court records of Hennepin County. In the matter of State of Minnesota versus Kimberly Potter, court file number 27 CR 217490, we, the jury, on the charge of manslaughter in the first degree while committing a misdemeanor on or about April 11, 2021, in Hennepin County, State of Minnesota, find the defendant guilty. And the verdict was agreed to at the hour of 11:40 a.m. and signed by the jury person on 12/23/21. The verdict on count 2 is we, the jury, on the charge of manslaughter in the second degree, culpable negligence on or about April 11, 2021, in Hennepin County, State of Minnesota, find the defendant guilty. And that verdict was agreed to at 10:30 a.m. on 12/21/21. Members of the jury, is this your true and correct verdict? So say you one, and so say you all.
We can change the world, change the world, change the world. We can change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Santita Jackson Show, WCPT 820, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station, AM 950 radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. I want you to call me at 773-763-9278. Let's talk about the Kim Potter verdict. And, of course, I want to hear from you. WCPT, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station, AM 950 radio, my family up in Minneapolis, St. Paul. And, of course, the Santita Jackson and Friends page. Everybody, please like me there. The Santita Jackson is just the landing page. So please, everybody, meet me over there and join me on my YouTube page, the Santita Jackson Show page. We are, of course, in the headlines, aside from COVID. Yes, aside from that, the Kim Potter case. It happened. Everything happened so quickly. We were wondering if we were going to have a hung jury. It did not happen like that. These 12 persons, 9 white jurors, 2 Asian jurors, 1 African-American, they decided to convict this former officer, the former head of the police union in Brooklyn Center, Minnesota. How did that happen? Well, brought together this august panel, who've been brought together by, of course, Attorney Ck Hoffler, and we've got Attorney Maria Banjo, former prosecutor, Attorney Gerald Griggs, a former prosecutor, of course, our legal Q&A sisters, CK, legal Q&A with CK, of course, brilliant chair of Rainbow Push, the immediate past president of the National Bar Association. She brought to us today a man who's really become iconic. We know that when we are in trouble, we can all reach out to this man. Who is the special guest you have brought to us today, Attorney Ck Hoffler?
Well, good morning, Santita, and to this wonderful panel and to your guests. When the history books are written about a modern day hero, a modern day Thurgood Marshall, a modern day lawyer who is the people's lawyer, a modern day fighter, a street fighter, a trailblazer, and someone who the people absolutely love because of his fight and his passion for justice. In my humble impression, there's one man who fits that bill, who day in and day out is relentless in his zeal to protect the least of these, and that is none other than my NBA past president, Ben Crump. He is someone who really doesn't really need an introduction, but I knew Ben from way back when. And I want all of your listeners to know that he was always that way. A family man, a man of Omega-style. You know that, Ben, he's like your dad.
Of course.
I mean, I just have to
And I'm a
that.
Delta, so I'm loving him. Okay.
But most important.
Oh, Marie. Hey, now, wait a minute. And Dr. Knighton is also a Delta. So,
That's Dr. Knighton over here.
Come on. Okay. All right. So we love him. We love him.
But most important, you could talk about all of his verdicts, his settlements, the work that he does in our community to protect, like I said, the least of these fighting fights that many times are unpopular. Many times.
In real time.
What's most important about Ben Crump in real time is his heart. It's his heart, uncompromising, unrelenting. And for that, Ben, we love you, the world loves you, and we thank you. So, Ben Crump.
We're so excited to have him here today. And of course, Attorney Robert Patillo, a Southeastern Regional Director for Rainbow Push, is here. But we know that Attorney Crump's time is tight. Everybody wants to speak with him this morning. And we want to hear from you. What happened yesterday? I mean, we thought we were going to have a hung jury. And CK, you can pick it up from here.
Well, absolutely. Well, what happened yesterday is the jury, after 3 days, deliberated and convicted Kim Potter on both counts. First-degree manslaughter, which was reckless, that she was basically reckless with her duties as a police officer, and second-degree manslaughter, which was on more of a negligence level. We talked about this past week, but the bottom line is they convicted her across the board. They deliberated. Obviously, there was some dissension within the jurors, but they came out swinging. So I give first honor to God for that verdict, but I also have to give honor to Keith Ellison, the visionary, the fighter, the Attorney General, who sought fit to put together a team to fight for the life, for the right, for justice, for Dante Wright, for his life. And then I also have to thank Ben Crump, who is one of the attorneys for the family members, because his role being there with the family, positioning the family for justice is equally as important. So that's what happened.
Attorney Crump, what happened? Please lay it out for us, because this was a shocker.
Yeah, first of all, I want to say thank you again for being on the show, and I'm always risen to a high level when I'm with my mentor, Ck Hoffler, who is just one of the preeminent attorneys, both in civil rights as well as business litigation. And I can't say it any better than CK explained it, other than to say, and I'm remembering your father, Reverend Jesse Jackson, coming to Minneapolis when Dante Wright was first killed, coming to the protest and coming to the church for his wake. And I think about your father's legacy, and what happened yesterday in my eyes it was not just a victory for getting accountability for Dante Wright's family, but CK, I really believe it was a victory for America in our quest for equal justice, because most people may not remember in that same courthouse in Minneapolis about 5 years ago, there was a black police officer named Officer Muhammad Noor, who was a good cop, just like they explained Kim Potter, and he killed an unarmed white woman in the dark of night when they were called out, and he thought she was reaching for something, And he said the same exact arguments. His defense was parallel to Kim Potter. He said, I made a mistake. I'm sorry. He cried. He said, I was trying to protect my fellow officer's life. They said you violated police department policies and procedures. Just like with Kim Potter, she cried. She said, I'm sorry. I made a mistake. I was trying to protect my fellow officer's life. And they said you violated policy procedure. Well, Officer Noor, that black police officer killed that white woman, his arguments fell on deaf ears. He was convicted, and he was sentenced, get this, CK, he was sentenced above the guidelines. They sentenced him to 12 years in prison. In his case, we all believe was more life or death, critical, quick decision than Kim Potter, because it was dark at night. They didn't know what she was reaching for, but that didn't matter. So yesterday, when we saw the roles reversed and we saw a white woman kill an unarmed young black man, everybody wanted to know, now that the roles are reversed, could we get equal justice? And because of Attorney General Keith Ellison, a great National Bar Association lawyer and a great brother, his team, we saw that equal justice is possible in America. So as I talk about that with you, Santita, I think about your father and his legacy and coming over to Minneapolis right when it happened. And so that's how I view it. That's what I'm doing a preview because I know I'm going to be talking a lot on CNN and MSNBC today. But that is what I saw yesterday. That's what I witnessed yesterday. When that verdict was rendered.
What are we to make of this 12-person jury? It's nine whites, 2 Asian Americans, and 1 African American. Were you surprised? And what was they took them 4 days. What do you think happened in that jury room, Attorney Crump?
Well, I think they deliberated a lot, and I think this jury was very similar to the jury for Ahmaud Arbery and Ck Hoffler. In 2021, we 3 for 3, dear. I mean, George Floyd convicted his killers, Ahmaud Arbery, jury convicted his killers, and Dante Wright, the jury convicted his killers. And so what I think, especially as we come upon the 10-year remembrance of Trayvon Martin being killed for walking home with a bag of Skittles and a can of iced tea while he was on the cell phone talking to his friend. And everybody's going to be saying, Trayvon Martin, 10 years later, how far has America come in our quest for racial justice? I think these verdicts this past year make a profound proclamation that we are making progress. We still have a long way to go, but we're making progress, especially when you see this was a jury of Kim Potter's peers, really. Mm-hmm. It's hard to argue that they were a jury of Dante Wright's peers with only 1 African American. However, that jury followed the evidence and the instructions of the court and rendered what many believe was a just verdict. And so it, to me, represents hope for America.
What did they see? How did they come up with this manslaughter conviction?
I think when you look at the instructions, and the lawyers all know this who are on the phone, the instructions were that it wasn't an intentional crime. So her saying it was a mistake wasn't a defense. A mistake is contemplated in the law. They say you did it not with intent, but you did it recklessly. You were careless, and it was so reckless that you had little care for human safety or life. And therefore, we're going to hold you criminally culpable because it was foreseeable because of your reckless actions that somebody's life could be taken or severely harmed. And so that's what they saw, that she was reckless. You talk about a 26-year veteran, you talk about a taser, and you talk about a gun, and all the distinguishable factors, the weight, the color, the fact that you have to push certain buttons on a taser to deploy it, and the fact that she knew she had done none of those things. She had to reach across her body, or she had to reach with her left hand to pull the taser. I think the jury saw all of that and said, no, this is not appropriate that we can accept this, that you just simply made a mistake without you being reckless, that you are not having due care. And the other thing I would say is this, and race is always a fact that regardless of whether we admit it or not in America, I think if Dante Wright would have been a young white man, the question would have been, has they even pulled the taser? It was a traffic stop. Everything they were dealing with him was a misdemeanor. They had his tag number. So even if a kid gets away, as the United States Supreme Court has contemplated, young people often do erratic things. And so the police officers are supposed to be the professional, rational people who deal with conflict resolution, not somebody who shoot first and ask questions later. But oftentimes when it's a young person of color, that is our reality, and that's why we have to continue to fight for better training, better accountability, and better transparency.
Well, the brilliant attorney Ck Hoffler is joined, of course, by attorneys, this brilliant panel, attorneys Maria Banjo, Gerald Griggs, and Robert Patillo. Ck, I've got about 7 or 8 minutes left in the segment. I want you to take over. I know you have some other probing questions you can ask of Attorney Crump. Ck, you still there?
Yes, I'm here. I wanted to thank.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Of course, now we can. Yes.
Okay. Then thank you for sharing that insight. I felt, Ben, that we needed to bring the brats in Georgia, Maria Banjo, Gerald Griggs, Robert Patillo, civil rights lawyers, human rights lawyers, extraordinary lawyers, because they too are fighting the fight in Georgia along with you on cases and are on point. A question that I have for you, Ben, we talked earlier so much, and you were part of the fight, a huge part of the fight, to get the passage and pushing the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act. And my view is, if ever there were a time in history where it's screaming and yelling for us to pass such a federal law, it's now. In this case and other cases illustrate that. What do you think about that? What are you saying about that in terms of the fight to pass federal legislation, policing reform? Ben.
And Madam President Hoffler, you were on a lot of those visits. I'm sorry, CNN call, but you were on a lot of those visits to the White House and to the United States Senate. So firsthand our struggle to fight the polarization in Washington. And, I'm thankful to Brother Griggs and them, because on the state levels and the federal levels, you all have shown us the way with the getting rid of the Citizens Arrest Act in Georgia, as well as what you all did with getting the Ahmaud Arbery Act passed to have punishment for a hate crime. And so I know it's possible. We just have to fight this federal gridlock because we can't lose this momentum. We can't lose these moments where people sacrifice their blood on this proposed legislation. So what I think, Madam President Hoffler, we have to have President Biden pass executive actions now, because people who came out during a pandemic and risked their life to deliver the White House to him and deliver the Senate to the Democrats, especially when you think about what you all did there in Atlanta, Georgia, we have to see action. And if we have this partisan divide that won't act, then we have to do everything in our power that we have the authority to do for people to see that we care about Black lives and they really do matter. And so we have to have some action. And as we know, as long as he's president, when he passes an executive order, as long as he's president, that's the law in the land. And if the Republicans, not one of them, Tim Scott or anybody, will come across the aisle, then Joe Biden, you do what you have to do to show us that our votes were not in vain.
CK, I've got 3 minutes left in the segment. Could I ask each of you? I'd like to ask both of you to react to this. I came across this story late last night. The mugshot from Kim Potter, she was smiling. This is after she had been convicted. Do you have any reaction to that, Attorney Hoffler, Attorney Crump, before you go?
Well, I'll let Attorney Crump answer because I can
okay. I think that it shows a little bit of disdain for the system because there are many people, just like with Kyle Rittenhouse, who said that, you know, people are expendable, especially people who are standing up for Black Lives Matter. And so I think it was almost disdain for the system, disdain for the rule of law, disdain for America. And so that's what I take of that picture. And it is pretty appalling when you look at it.
Well, what's your final word before you go to CNN and BBC and everybody in the world wants to speak with you. And I'm so glad that you started your day with us today. And of course, made possible by Attorney Ck Hoffler, because all she need do is call you. We all love and respect her so much. What is the final thought? What do you want us to know? And what is the path forward, Attorney Crump?
I think that first I want to say thank you to CK, thank you to Brother Griggs, all the brilliant attorneys and the brilliant minds collected, because we're all in this together. As Dr. King said, we all have a role to play. And we have to have the courage of our conviction to make sure that our children are more intelligent than those who would seek to oppress them. And so every day is another struggle in the liberation for Black people, whether that's in these police excessive force cases or these discrimination cases like against State Farm, where I was at Rainbow Push, and we was with this brilliant sister, Dr. Carla Campbell Jackson, who says she's going to use her voice to help others who are suffering in silence to discrimination. We all have a role to play in this struggle. So on behalf of Dante Wright, George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, and the legacy of so many others who are still being defined, let us continue to stand up for our children, speak up for our children, and fight for our children's future. Thank you, Santita.
Sending you much, much, much love, and let us march on until victory is won. Amen. Everybody call us at 773-763. WCPT 773-763-9278. I've got less than a minute here, Attorney Ck Hoffler. Thank you. Of course, you're not going any place.
1 minute.
But I want to thank you for bringing Attorney Crump to us today, because you made that happen. 30 seconds. She was smiling at her mugshot after she was convicted.
She's smiling at her mugshot.
CK?
And I have to tell you, that was deplorable. That was deplorable. But what was more remarkable and disgusting to me was that her defense lawyer would say, look, she should not be incarcerated because after all, she's a Catholic. It's the holiday. There's no reason. She's not a flight risk. There's no reason for her to go to jail now. Why don't you just wait till after sentencing? That was also deplorable. That she's a Catholic. What about Dante Wright never being able to sit at the table with his family?
15.
Now that part, because tomorrow, with all of the exhilaration of yesterday, his parents and his sisters and brothers will have an empty seat at that table. His son will not be held by his daddy tomorrow. Think about that, everybody. Did we get justice or accountability, or a little bit of both? I want to know what your thoughts are. Call us at 773-763-9278. Back with more of the Santita Jackson Show in just a few minutes. Okay, beautiful panel. We're going to come right to you, and you all can have fun. I can just sit back and chill. I'm so glad that you're there. And we were just trying to grab as much as we could. CK said, get as much as you can from Attorney Crump because he's got to go. And we heard it, too.
And you know, it was great that he started his day with us with this kind of time. I wanted him to set the table, if you will, because he was there and he represents the families in the courtroom, was praying with them the entire time. But I do want to expand the discussion. And I think that because of the phenomenal work that Joe Griggs, Maria Banjo, and Robert Petillo do in one of the most significant states, I believe, Georgia is one of the most significant states where all eyes of the country and the world will be looking at in the upcoming elections, not only because of Senator Warnock running and the 2022 and Stacey Abrams, but because of things that are happening in Georgia. I think the vindication of Ahmaud Arbery's murder, there are some ramifications of that. And I think things are happening in Georgia and some of the actions of people like Gerald Griggs, Maria Banjo, and Robert Patillo, because they're not just lawyers, not just civil rights lawyers, not just defense lawyers in some instances, but they are part of a movement, whether it's with the NAACP, Rainbow Push, and other grassroots actions for justice, voting rights, civil rights. And so there's a marriage between what they do in the courtroom and what they do with the people. I don't want to say on the street, but what they do with the people as advocates. Mm-hmm. So, Cynthia, I like to come back to that because it's all tied into these verdicts. We can't just stop with one verdict. Mm-hmm. We don't have federal legislation. So now what do we do on a state level? What do we do on a local level? And how do we continue to push for the passage of federal legislation? And why is that important? People need to hear over and over and over again why it's important. We have to connect the dots for them, I believe, as officers of the court, as lawyers out there fighting every day. Connect the dots. What is the relationship between the passage of the George Floyd Justice Policing Act or an executive order and Daunte Wright's murder, Ahmaud Arbery's murder? And Gerald, I'm going to come to you on a break and ask you, what is the connection? Connect the dots for people so they understand why it's important to follow these cases, why it's important to serve on juries, why it's important first to register to vote so you can be considered a juror, and so you can vote in people who push the interests that are important to you in your community and vote out people who do not.
Well, and also if you could put in why it's important for people of a particular mindset to be prosecutors and why Keith Ellison's role is so important, if you could go there too. Because this is happening within the context of his tenure as the Attorney General. And so him leaving Congress was not a loss. It was really not just a gain for Minnesota, it was a national gain because he's resetting the table and helping you to see Kim Fox's and the Marilyn Mosby's and all of these people who are helping to reset policy in a different way. And you see the fight that they have on their hands. So, CK, I'm going to go to Chaparral first. And of course, Chaparral has a connection to this. She's one of the great caterers, she's our own Martha Stewart. She lost her son with the police here in Chicago. And it took almost a year to get the tape. And we still cannot get a lot of answers, everybody. So we're just so grateful. Carol Soskin sent you some love, Chaparral. She said she's thinking about you and Courtney today. We just love Carol.
Thank you so much. We definitely needed, Courtney's birthday is on New Year's Eve, so these days are very, very hard for me. But
hold on.
Change the world, change the world. We can change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world.
Everybody, we're just talking with Attorney Benjamin Crump. Thank you, Ck Hoffler, for making that interview happen right here on the Santita Jackson Show on WCPT 820, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station here in Chicago, and AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. A lot of stuff has been happening, has been just bubbling up out of Minnesota over the past year. Yeah, I mean, just a lot, and a lot of change. And we have to be mindful of the fact that African Americans this is one of the hardest states for them to live in. Poverty, police abuse, and yet we're seeing some glimmers of hope. As we watch Kim Potter be held accountable for the killing of Daunte Wright. Before we get back into that, Attorney Ck Hoffler, with this magnificent panel you've brought before us today, let me go to you. Celebrations by us with Chaparral Wells, who has. Of course, you are connected to cases like these, but you are also making some great food for us. And I can't wait to see you tomorrow so I can get mine. Thank you.
Yes, Santita, we are getting some orders out today, as well as also we got some out last night. I want to thank Christopher Jones, who picked up his order yesterday, and he texted me this morning. He said he tried to save some food for today because he didn't ate it all yesterday, but I appreciate it. I appreciate it so much, and I just want everyone to know that we are open year-round, so please give us a call at 708-526-4546, 708-526-4546. We are a full-service event planner as well as also catering, so don't hesitate to give us a call. Thanks so much, Santita.
Okay.
And I just quickly wanted
For
to
New
say,
Year's.
Santita, because you know I have to tap in on this thing. What was, and I would like to see what the panel actually has to say about
Well, let me
this.
say this before
When the
you begin. Everyone can see her podcast. It's an award-winning podcast. It's one of the most awarded podcasts, quite frankly, in the United States, if not the world. They are closing in on 2 million downloads. You can hear the Somebody podcast on the Intercept. Okay, go on, Chaparral.
Thank you, Santita. I just wanted to say, when they read the verdict for Kim Potter yesterday, I was looking at her demeanor, and her demeanor was very stoic and very calm. But in my mind, she's thinking, it didn't work. It didn't work. The fake tears, the falling out, the hysterical that she made all on the stand, the jury didn't buy it. And I think that one of the things that the jury had to actually go through and what took them so long to get the manslaughter conviction was the fact that they asked to review the videos several times because her you could clearly see in her body cam that it was a black handle gun and that she pulled it from her dominant side. So it was clear to the jurors that she intentionally did it. So even though she was yelling, taser, 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 she knew exactly what she was trying to do, which was kill this young black man. Thank you, Santita.
Okay, well, CK, you can pick it up from there. And why do you think she, because of course she expressed remorse immediately after shooting Dante Wright, but she didn't go offer him any help. Wasn't that interesting?
Well, she expressed remorse, Santita, right after, and also expressed, oh my God, I'm going to prison. Mm-hmm. So this is the thing, and Chappelle, I hear you. A lot of people feel the way you do. But what was beautiful about being charged with manslaughter, first degree and second degree, is that they didn't have to show intent. Because if she had been charged with murder, then the intent would have mattered. And I thought the best evidence for her, for the prosecution, was her own words right there at the scene. See, all these after-the-fact experts coming, opining about, it was justifiable use of force. She had the right to pull her gun. That was justifiable according to Section 521872D, little numeral 1. That, to me, was not really relevant. And thankfully, the jury didn't buy it either because she didn't feel that deadly use of force was appropriate when she yelled taser. Now, that's, Chappelle, I know it's different from what you're saying, how she intended to do, but when you have to go for a conviction, for a win, you go for what you know. And so I'm going to actually kick this to Gerald Griggs, who has many hats. Civil rights attorney, he's plaintiff's attorney, he's a defense attorney, he's been a prosecutor. He has had many, many hats and has incredible experience and has made a difference in Georgia and nationally because of the fine work that he's done. So, Gerald, why don't you respond to what Chappelle said? And then, Maria, I'm going to ask you to do the same.
Well, thank you, CK, for having me, and thank you, Santita, for having me back on the show. And yesterday, I think the country continued to have a robust conversation on what police accountability looks like because of the work of lawyers like Ben Crump and Lee Merritt and myself and Chris Stewart and Maria Banjo and Robert Patillo and, of course, you, CK. And I think that this case was an open and shut case. I always said that when I saw the video. The video speaks for itself. The video spoke loudly to the jury, and the words of Officer Kim Potter right after she committed this criminal act spoke to what happened. She didn't say, oh, my God, I'm sorry. She said, oh, my God, I'm going to prison, because she knew she had committed a crime. So I'm glad the jury got it right. As Ben said, we're 3 for 3 at this point. And what Keith Ellison is doing in Minnesota is sending a message to the rest of the country, to prosecutors around the country. The excuses are over. You need to put these cases before grand juries. You need to put these cases before pettit juries, which are trial juries, and you need to get these convictions, because all of the side chair quarterback after the fact does not work with juries. This jury went through the evidence. They took 28 hours to go through the evidence, but it's telling that they had a verdict very quickly on the lesser count, and they were diligent on the top count and convicted her of both. You know, I was watching Court TV and CNN, listening to all the pundits. And with all respect to my brothers in the bar, 17 years in a courtroom, I've seen juries do this before, and they have been very conscientious to return verdicts that speak the truth against civilians. So what makes you think they can't do the same thing against law enforcement? And I agree with Ben. The difference is this: if we can't get the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act passed through Congress, or we can't get an executive order by this president whom Georgia delivered, then we will put pressure on prosecutors around this state and around this country to do exactly what Keith Ellison did. Because to tie this all together, we don't need to pass another law. What we need to do is enforce the law as written right now. You don't have the right to take people's lives. You don't have the right to be grossly negligent or reckless in the use of force against African Americans alone. This needs to stop, and it's time for lawyers, particularly prosecutors, to step up and enforce the law as written. So that's the next step. That's what we have to demand, not only in the national cases, but in the local cases, the statewide cases, and, of course, the regional cases. And if we continue to put that type of pressure on prosecutors, you will see continued results like this.
CK?
Well, I have to tell you, it couldn't have been spoken more eloquently. And thank you, Joe, for connecting the dots. Maria, what do you say about this? What did you see based on your experience as a former prosecutor, someone who is also a civil rights lawyer who's in the community day in and day out, and also who is very much engaged in the political fabric here in Georgia? What did you see with that verdict yesterday?
So what I saw was a very attuned and educated jury. As we continue to get wins like this, it demonstrates that what we saw in 2020 and beyond with our protesting and advocating for ourselves is that the general public is understanding what's appropriate and what is not appropriate when it comes to policing here in America. At a different time, it could have been possible that we could have gotten a not guilty. But what we're seeing now is we're having a much more educated, much more empathetic, and open-minded jury. And that is allowing prosecutors, one, to put up these cases and actually win. You know, I think now more than ever, because we are still not having the federal legislation that we need to make sure that we really understand, double down on these local elections. We all know local politics matter, but in this particular case, it matters even more, especially because we don't have the federal protections. And I think now people are paying more attention to these judicial races, sheriff races, DA races, because they matter. You know, we can't opt out and say we're not going to get involved in those races, because what we are seeing is that those are the people making these everyday decisions and can really either hamper our ability to obtain justice or accountability, or help in that pursuit of greater accountability and justice. And so I think as we move into the 2020 election cycle, we can't let our foot off the brakes when it comes to these local down ballot races.
CK, I think we've got Robert Patillo with us today.
Right. And I was just going to kick a question to Robert Patillo. Now, Robert, because of your facility and ease with bringing. I've never heard someone who articulates so eloquently with such humor and brings humor and truth to power than Robert Patillo. But Robert, I'm going to ask you this. I'm just going to put it right there because I so enjoy hearing you. Robert, what can we do? You are the Southeast Regional Director of Rainbow Push Coalition, and you've been in the community, and you also are on international media. You have your own radio show. What can we do on a grassroots level and speaking truth to power through the media, through Black media, through non-traditional media, through some mainstream media? What can we do, and how should we be acting on a regular basis relative to what has happened in this Dante Wright murder case?
Well, I think, as the Attorney Crump said earlier, we have to put this into the larger context of this quote-unquote Black Lives Matter movement, which you can trace to the beginning with Trayvon Martin or beginning with Troy Davis. But for a decade and a half, we've had a sustained movement of African Americans in this country fighting for social justice to bring attention to and to dramatize the inequities of the criminal justice system. And we've seen every effort by mainstream media, by conservative politicians to discredit the movement, to say that it hasn't been effective. This has been the most effective social justice movement since the anti-apartheid movement in the 1980s. We will not have seen an Aubrey or a McMichaels be convicted before this movement. We have not seen this police officer convicted before this movement. And the reason is we have brought forth to the American people and dramatized before them exactly what we have been talking about for the last several decades: the inequities in the system, the over-policing by officers, the fact that very often these things are covered up and never brought to the light of day. Just the fact that starting there about a decade ago, we started seeing body cams roll out to police officers. If these body cams weren't in place right now, this officer would have simply said that it never happened. We know what the story would have been. He reached for my gun. I had to defend myself. We've had the other officers put statements in corroborating it, and we never would have seen justice. So we have to keep the pressure on. We can't get halfway through the race and declare victory. As has been said, we have to have federal legislation to normalize this across the country, because right now it really does depend on what state you're in. If this was in a state where Keith Ellison was not the attorney general, more than likely this prosecution would not have gone the same way. You can just look at the Rittenhouse case in Wisconsin, the difference between a competent prosecution team versus some that seem that they're kind of swinging at ghost when it comes to trying to get a conviction in a case. So we're also going to need to start working in state and local politics, as was said previously. I know a lot of my defense attorney friends are not going to hear this. A lot of people are going to have to start running for prosecutor. A lot of people are going to have to start running for state court judge and superior court judge, because once we start being on those benches, then for the low-profile cases, the ones where you do not have international movements around it, where you do not have video, where you do not have people marching outside the courthouse, just for the regular run-of-the-mill case, we have to have black prosecutors and black state's attorneys and black judges who are right-minded, not simply of a particular complexion, but of the right persuasion when it comes to the interest of justice, to stand up for these people. So I think what we need to do going into 2022 is start working on in a multifaceted way on all levels to ensure that we are fighting for the type of criminal justice reform that is needed to create real equity within our system. And once we are able to achieve that, then you fight the next fight thereafter, because the battle is continuous. It is always going. The other side is always trying to find ways around it. So it's our job to keep up and outpace them in the pursuit of justice.
CK, we have a caller, Pam from the west side of Chicago. Pam, what's on your mind?
Good morning, Santita, attorney, CK, and panel. My concern is Kim Potter's, that was a family photo, and all was missing was just a little makeup, that mugshot. I agree with Chaparral. She thought that she wouldn't go to jail for killing an N. That's how I felt, Santita. Mm-hmm. Her expression, she wasn't going to go to jail for this, and how dare they send her to jail for this. Now, I want to focus on, because this is going to happen again, and I heard Attorney Crump, and I just respectfully say that this goes beyond training. We have to do more vetting to remove these racist officers from the police force. You have to get the personnel right, in my opinion, Santita. And you know, right here in Chicago, they're constructing a $95 million police a police facility. And this is not going to do anything to deter crime because police brutality. On the north side, they know they're training. In the Loop area, they know training when it comes to non-Black people. So my concern is that we have to mention, and Attorney CK, I'll ask you, I think it's time for polygraph. Whatever vetting system they use for Biden, it's time for these law enforcement agencies to incorporate polygraph in the hiring process and have very specific questions regarding different ethnic groups, demographics. Your first exposure to Black people shouldn't be in a career as a police officer. Mm. And so I just kind of like to know what you all think about that. She talked about Kim Potter's attorney spoke about Kim Potter being Catholic. Well, I've also asked our civil rights leaders and our pastors to get the Catholic Church more involved, to get Catholic priests involved, because they need to help tamp down on this racism and hatred. And that's something that they need to include in their sermons every Sunday, considering you have a large portion of officers that are Catholic, particularly here in Chicago.
Well, you know, and particularly given their power. I mean, because the Catholic Church is not just a church, it's a state. They dispense passports because the Pope is not just the head of a church, he is the head of state. So when he makes these pronouncements, he is talking policy as well. Let us not be fooled by that. You know, just let's be clear. Which is why when we founded this country, you know, they said we got to separate church and state because they knew what the power of the Catholic Church and what their real role is. They're a country. It's the city of the Vatican. It's a country. It's a country, y'all. They have consulates and embassies all over the world. CK, should we always see Black ministers involved, those who are free enough to anyway. What about getting the Catholic Church and other clergy involved in this fight?
I think it's an excellent idea. In fact, there were clergy involved, as you know, at the courthouse, and it became controversial during the Ahmaud Arbery trial. Of course, it's important to have our faith leaders involved. Your dad and others were there. They were, if you had a different judge, they would have been possibly excluded from the courtroom. And during the trial of the McMichaels and Bryan for the murder of Ahmaud Arbery in Georgia. But it's very important for the faith leaders. I am actually a Catholic. The Catholic Church is, like many churches, a monstrosity of a powerful entity that has the ability to do so much good. They need to be more involved. Without a question, step up to the plate, help address these things. I think that's one of the things that we need to do more. We need to have more synergy, more collaboration with the faith community. And in the African American community, we see this a lot. The faith community, policing, and other communities to make a more just environment and community so that Black and brown people are not just killed so much. There are thousands and thousands of Dante Wright cases that we've never even heard of, that we will never see. So one by one, but we need a national struggle on all levels, a national level effort to bring about change on this issue, policing reform, desperately needed.
Well, you know, we've got about 4 minutes left, CK, so I want to do a round robin with this fantastic panel that you have pulled together. I cannot thank you enough. Well, you're part of the family here, so we just thank you for doing this. Attorney Griggs?
And thank you, Cynthia.
Oh, please, you don't have to thank me. You're home here. You know that.
I know, but I have to run. As you know, I'm going to be on MSNBC.
Your closing thought.
As well. My closing thoughts are, we got to keep on fighting. This is one victory. We're 3 for 3, but the fight is not over. We can't rest on our laurels. In fact, now is the time to be energized, to make a change, because that is what we need to do.
You're on MSNBC today and NBC and their other platforms?
I am.
Okay. So we'll be checking you out.
MSNBC from 9 to 11. Yeah.
9 to 11 Eastern time. So she's about to go on to MSNBC. and NBC now. So we will see you then.
And it will be, and it shifts. There are some, so I might actually come on at 9:15, but I'm blocked out from 9 to 11. So hopefully I will see you all. And Santita, thank you again, and thank you to this amazing panel.
Absolutely. Attorney Griggs, your closing thoughts.
Yes. Just closing thoughts, as we continue this march toward justice, and like so many of the other lawyers have said, this is just the continuation of the push for justice. I want everybody to get involved. We've talked a little bit about voting, but we have to understand that if you don't vote, you don't sit on the jury, you don't get an opportunity to be a jury of their peers and to make these decisions. We have to hold judges and prosecutors accountable. The reason the system works the way it works is because you have certain individuals that are gatekeepers. I do agree. More of us need to become state's attorneys and judges. But until that happens, the ultimate power is within the people. And the people speak up at the ballot boxes and in jury pools and in jury boxes, you will continue to see this constant drum of actual justice. So whether it's down in Brunswick, Georgia, or it's in Brooklyn Center, Minnesota, we can make this type of change, and we have to hold the administration accountable to its promises. It promised by May to have the George Floyd Justice Policing Act. Nothing is stopping the President of the United States from signing an executive order tomorrow to enforce police accountability. So as we continue to push toward justice, don't forget 2020. Don't forget 2021. We had the protests in 2020. We're now getting justice in 2021. We have to continue this pressure. So I applaud everybody for staying in this cause, and we will get to the finish line, but we have to keep our foot on the gas.
Absolutely. Look, you're right. Protests in 2020, progress in 2021. Attorney Banjo, 1 minute for you.
Thank you again for having me on the show. It's always a pleasure.
Yes.
I'm happy that Robert Patillo mentioned the need for more prosecutors and judges of a certain persuasion. Gerald will tell you, I've been advocating for that for a very long time. I'm even trying to convince Gerald to do something like that. I think until we have the right kind of folks in place, we're not going to be able to see the kind of accountability that we need, the accountability that our law and justice demands. And so I think that we need to make sure that we are encouraging folks like ourselves to step up to the plate and run for these offices so that we are going to be not just in the room, but the ones making the decisions. Again, thank you. Thank you so much for having me on the show. It's always a pleasure.
Oh, can't wait to have you back. Can't wait to have you back. Come on, we're getting ready for 2022. Robert, 30 seconds for you. And of course, will you be
1
on the
minute.
air live this Sunday?
Yes, we will be on the air live this Sunday on News and Talk 1380 WAOK from 1 to 4 for our post Christmas recap show. But I do want people to stay involved. We get very ginned up for these big cases when all the news media is there. But in almost every major city around the country, there is a case like this going on right now. And believe it or not, these cases are open to the public. Go down to the courthouse, sit in the courtroom, monitor what's going on. Believe it or not, it does affect trials. It does affect how evidence is presented whether or not it's an empty courtroom or
15
is there and present and active. We all have a role in ensuring that we are fighting towards criminal justice reform. And I think once we take that at the role of participation, we can break down many of these
5
the thin blue line that tend to protect their own. We have to protect ourselves just as they do.
Everybody, God bless you. Thank you for all that you do to make this show grow and be what it is. And we're going to do even greater things in 2022. I'm sending all of my love to my panel today, all the panels throughout the year, and to my morning stars. Wouldn't be able to make it without you, whether I see you online or not. You're with me in my heart. Merry Christmas, everybody. God bless you. To my brothers and sisters, with a religious commitment or without, I love you. God loves you. And just know that with all of my heart. I pray that you have a blessed holy season. God bless you, everybody. See you in 2022. My wonderful people, attorneys Griggs, Patillo, and Banjo, Do you all want to say anything else before I let everybody go?
No. Thank you again. It was always a great conversation.
Well, I can't wait to have you back. I really, really can't, because it was just great. But I mean, you all make the point that, we have to get involved, or, in these spaces that don't make us comfortable. I mean, I know Kamala Harris took a lot of heat for having been a prosecutor. But the thing is, we need to get in those offices. I know you don't want to. I mean, look, I did political punditry at Fox News. Oh my goodness, why would you be there? We have no friends anywhere, everybody. Be very clear.
Right.
You got to take the fight where the
Absolutely.
fight is, okay? That's what you must do.
Mhm.
Don't play. Don't play. Don't play. And so I'm so grateful for your work as past prosecutors, really. And because look, this is what Johnny Cochran taught us this lesson too, didn't he? He said, "No, I had to go over here so I could learn." What is one of the great lessons of Johnny Cochran? Because he really he was just a supernova. Maria Banjo, Attorney Griggs, Robert Patillo. Does anyone, I mean, because I can tell you just from, as a layperson, I just learned so much from someone who got in the system, understood it, and then came out defending us in it. But he could only do that because he knew the system. He knew it.
Yeah, absolutely. He was a very charismatic person, and at the end of the day, trial lawyering is really about knowing people and knowing the human condition, human behavior, and how to persuade. And he was masterful at that, and that's something that I think a lot of attorneys try to learn from and use moving forward. So,
Oh, well, thank you for that. I mean, really, because it just really, what a blessing. But you all are blessings, and I cannot wait to have you be a more part of the show in 2022. We've got a lot to talk about. And this, when we see this, the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act, we see how important it is. We got to get it passed. Got to get it passed. Got to get it passed.
Oh, yeah.
I hope you're going to have a wonderful Thanksgiving. Goodness gracious. Christmas. It's already Christmas. But, girl, it's going to be 54 degrees in Chicago today. So it doesn't even feel.
Too.
Is that crazy? It doesn't even feel like I'm dreaming of a white Christmas, like the ones I used to know.
Right. All right, you take care now. Thank you again. I really do appreciate it.
Can't wait to have you back. God bless you.
All right, you too.
Everybody, bye. I love you. Merry, 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 Merry Christmas. Thank you I just thank you for letting me be a part of your lives. Really. I'm honored. I'm honored and humbled that I have made the space to be with me and with each other, with all of us together every day. Thank you, thank you, thank you with all of my heart. With all of my heart, you humble me by coming on and being with this wonderful, wonderful aggregation of people that we have. And I thank God for you. I love you, everybody. Merry, Merry, Merry Christmas. God bless you. Have a great one.